I didn't cry when I found out he stole my bonus. I didn't cry when he gave my project to someone else. But I cried the night I found a voice message from my mother, one I missed because I was in the office, coding through her last birthday. That was the night I realized I had become invisible in the very system I helped build. My name is Jade. I'm 37 years old, and for the last 8 years, I was the lead product strategist at a rising tech firm in Seattle. Not the face of the company, not the star on stage at conferences, but the one people came to when something needed to actually work. I never played office politics. I didn't care about recognition. What mattered to me was building something real, something that could scale, something that solved real problems. 6 months ago, Marcus, our CEO, called me into a closed-door meeting. He was always charming in that I read 2 books on charisma kind of way. He told me he had an opportunity, a game changer, a potential multi-million-dollar contract with a healthcare tech company. He said, "Jade, I need someone I can trust, someone who can lead this quietly." There wouldn't be a formal announcement. The project had to stay internal, off the record. I'd be the architect, the brain, the one laying the entire technical framework. And if I pulled it off, there's a performance bonus, equity too. Let's just say, this could be the last job you ever have to take. I didn't ask for paperwork. I should have. But after 8 years, loyalty does strange things to your judgment. And part of me wanted, so badly, to believe that finally, someone saw my worth. So, I got to work. For 6 months, I poured everything into that platform. I designed a secure data integration system that could handle patient records across 5 states. I rebuilt the back-end infrastructure from scratch. I skipped vacations. I worked weekends. I missed dinner with my daughter 3 times a week. I still remember that one night. I had just gotten home around 2:30 a.m., exhausted, drained. I opened my phone and saw a missed FaceTime from my daughter with a message. "Hi, Mommy. Are you coming to my dance recital tomorrow? I saved you the middle seat so you can see me spin." But I had another call scheduled at 6 a.m., so I set an alarm, closed my eyes, and told myself, after this project, things will change. They didn't. 3 weeks after we landed the $3 million contract, yes, Marcus stopped replying to my emails. The performance bonus never came. The equity? No written agreement, HR said. The credit? A junior associate was introduced as the technical visionary at the company's investor showcase. That's when something inside me began to crack. Not from anger, not yet, but from the quiet ache of being erased. I didn't just build the platform. I gave it my time, my health, my family moments I can't get back. And the man I trusted didn't even remember to say thank you. Or maybe he did. Maybe forgetting was part of the plan. I tried to stay calm, tried to believe it was a mistake, that the silence from Marcus was temporary, that HR just needed time to sort things out. I even gave it a few more days, showing up, attending meetings, continuing to lead my team like everything was fine. It wasn't. One Friday afternoon, I knocked on Marcus's office door. He didn't look up. "Got a minute?" He nodded, still typing. I stood there, hands folded, trying to steady my voice. "I wanted to check on the bonus we discussed, the equity. It's been almost a month since the launch, and Marcus cut me off with a half laugh. "Oh, that." He finally looked up. "Jade, you've done well. Really, but I think there's been a misunderstanding." I blinked. A misunderstanding? There was never a formal agreement, no signed document. I said we'd talk about it after the project was done, not that it was guaranteed. I felt my stomach drop. "You said—" "I said a lot of things," he interrupted again, smiling like this was a game. "We were under pressure. You rose to the occasion. But at the end of the day, we have to look at performance across the whole company, not just one project." And just like that, everything I had built, everything I had sacrificed, was dismissed like it meant nothing. I left his office with a frozen smile. Walked past the same people I had worked late nights with, past the front desk where I used to bring donuts for the interns, past the framed photo of our team at last year's retreat, the one Marcus made me organize. By Monday, things got worse. I was removed from the client email threads. The engineering lead started reporting to someone else. My access to the codebase I had written was restricted for restructuring purposes. And then I saw it. At the monthly company update, a new face stood in front of my work. Lucas, a junior developer, smart kid, eager. But barely a year out of college, he was introduced by Marcus as the rising star who architected our latest success in healthcare tech. I felt my chest tighten. My name wasn't mentioned, not once. I left the meeting early and sat in the stairwell for over an hour, replaying his words in my head. The rising star who architected our latest success, my system, my 6 months, my sleepless nights. And now, his spotlight. I started waking up at 4 a.m. with panic attacks, not because I lost the bonus, but because something deeper had been stolen. My dignity, my sense of value. It's hard to explain to people who've never experienced it, what it's like to pour your soul into something, only to have it quietly erased while everyone else claps. I remember driving home one night, radio off, the city lights blurring in my tears. I whispered out loud, "What if I never mattered here at all?" That night, I opened my laptop, determined to start documenting everything. Emails, code changes, project outlines. Not for revenge. Not yet. Just clarity. Closure. That's when I noticed something, a legal note I'd bookmarked months ago, back when the project first started. In the absence of a signed IP transfer agreement, the intellectual property remains the default property of the creator. My fingers hovered above the trackpad. And suddenly, the erasure didn't feel so final anymore. I couldn't stop thinking about that one line. In the absence of a signed IP transfer agreement, it played in my head like a quiet bell in a dark hallway. Distant, but persistent. I didn't fully understand what it meant yet, but I knew one thing for sure. Something about this situation wasn't just unfair, it was wrong. Still, that realization didn't stop the slow, steady humiliation that followed. The next week, Lucas, yes, the rising star, was officially promoted to Product Innovation Lead. That had been my role in all but title for nearly 2 years. He moved into the corner office next to Marcus. They even had his nameplate ready. A shiny gold tag with clean black letters. Lucas reads, Innovation Lead. I stood there in the hallway, coffee in hand, looking at that nameplate like someone had slapped me across the face in public. I forced a smile when he walked by. "Hey, Jade," he said. "Hope you don't mind. They just asked me to take over some of your documentation. Marcus said you'd be stepping back." Stepping back? I hadn't been told anything. No conversation, no memo, not even a Slack message. I was just replaced. Too shocked to speak, I sat down at my desk, my hands shaking, and tried to remember what I'd even come in to do. Emails were flooding in about small bugs, updates, design tweaks. I answered them all, like a ghost trying to prove I was still alive. That afternoon, I got an invite to an internal leadership luncheon. I was the only department head who wasn't on the guest list. I stared at the screen for a long time before closing my laptop and walking out. That night, I pulled an old photo album off my bookshelf. It was from my daughter's first year of preschool, back when I still worked part-time and made it to every recital, every birthday, every parent lunch. Her chubby fingers in finger paint, her tiny shoes, her toothy grin when she saw me in the crowd. God, what happened to me? Somewhere along the line, I had traded being there for the promise of being valued. And now, I had neither. A few days later, the final blow came. It was an all-hands meeting. Marcus was presenting our company's vision for innovation to the board and senior staff. The lights dimmed. A video played. A slick, professionally edited montage of our healthcare platform launch. It showcased sleek UI screens, data dashboards, smiling clients, and Lucas in every single frame. He was explaining the system I built, pointing to the infrastructure I designed, using my exact words from earlier presentations. He even had the gall to mimic my hand gestures. I could feel the blood rushing to my face. It was too much. Too much disrespect. Too much erasure. Too much betrayal. I left before the applause started. I couldn't bear to hear it. I drove for hours that evening, no destination in mind. Just open roads and the sound of my own breathing. Too angry to cry, too tired to scream, I ended up in front of my mother's old house, the one we sold after she passed. I hadn't been back since. I sat in the car, staring at the dark windows, remembering her voice. She once told me, "If they take your work, they take nothing. If they take your belief in yourself, they take everything." At that moment, I realized Marcus hadn't stolen my success. He had stolen my reflection of it. And I had let him. The next morning, something shifted. I arrived at the office before anyone else and sat quietly in the break room, staring at the coffee pot like it might whisper the next step. Instead, I pulled out my laptop and went back to that legal note. This time, I didn't just skim it. I read every clause, every line, every case example. I started making copies, files, prototypes, time-stamped drafts. I uploaded versions to my private drive. I backed up emails, conversations, screenshots of Slack threads. Not for revenge, not yet. But because I had finally remembered what I had forgotten in the midst of trying to be liked, accepted, and included, I created this. Not Marcus, not Lucas, me. And maybe, just maybe, I still had more power than I thought. Anger doesn't always arrive with shouting. Sometimes it comes quietly, like a low hum under your skin, a pulse of clarity that sharpens everything around you. That's what it felt like the morning I walked into the office, coffee in hand, fully aware that I was no longer a part of the team I helped build. No more illusions, no more justifications. They hadn't just taken credit for my work. They'd rewritten the narrative and erased me from it. That realization didn't break me. It lit something on fire. I started seeing things for what they were. The fake smiles, the patronizing praise, the way people looked through me during meetings, like I was furniture. I heard whispers I hadn't noticed before. Is she even on this project anymore? Or, didn't Lucas build that whole back end? It was infuriating. But the worst part? I had helped them do it, by staying silent, by trusting the wrong people, by not fighting back the first time they minimized me. Never again. I spent every night that week pulling together a full technical timeline, my architecture drafts, version histories, commit logs. I even exported Zoom transcripts from early design calls where Marcus had praised my system as revolutionary. But the goldmine came when I searched the company drive for a file I had shared early in the project. There it was. IP transfer j.docs draft only. It was still labeled as draft. They never had me sign it. Oh my God. I sat back in my chair, stunned. After everything, after they gutted my role, stole my credit, and pretended I never existed, they forgot to legally secure the most valuable thing I had built. It was laughable, ridiculous, infuriating. They had built $1 million deal on a legal oversight, my oversight. That's when the idea hit me. I didn't need to beg for what was owed to me. I didn't even need to confront Marcus. Yet. What I needed was leverage. So I called an old friend, Nina, a tech attorney I met at a Women in Leadership conference years ago. We hadn't spoken in a while, but when I explained the situation, her voice sharpened. They're using your software without a signed IP agreement? Jade, that's not just unethical. It's potentially catastrophic for them, especially if they're already collecting revenue from it. I couldn't believe it. I felt a rush of adrenaline, and for the first time in weeks, something close to joy. I knew it felt wrong, I said. It is wrong, she replied, and you're not powerless. You just forgot how powerful you are. Wow, that line hit me hard. She was right. Somewhere along the way, I had shrunk myself to fit into a space that was never meant to hold me. That night, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror and stared at my reflection. Not the tired eyes or the quiet sadness, but the woman behind it, the builder, the architect, the one who made things work. I whispered to myself, they thought I was done, but they had no idea what was coming. It's strange how clear everything becomes once you stop asking for permission. After that call with Nina, I didn't sleep much, but it wasn't the panicked kind of insomnia anymore. It was the kind that comes from focus, from purpose, from the sharp buzz of a mind building something again. But this time, I wasn't building a product. I was building my strategy. The first thing I did was collect every trace of my authorship, the technical documentation, the initial architecture maps, early code commits tied to my user ID, Slack discussions, time-stamped mock-ups with my initials. I created a secured cloud folder labeled Evidence, Do Not Touch, and gave Nina access. She reviewed the files and said, Jade, this is airtight. Honestly, I've seen companies sued for less. God. That felt good to hear. But we weren't going to sue. Not yet. Instead, we sent something simpler and far more effective. A cease and desist letter, drafted carefully, wrapped in legal authority, and delivered directly to Marcus and the company's legal team. The letter clearly outlined the facts. That the core system of their flagship healthcare platform was built solely by me. Yeah, that no signed IP transfer had ever been executed. That any further use or licensing of that system without my written consent would be considered a violation of intellectual property law. We gave them 7 business days to respond. 7 days. I'll never forget the feeling when Nina hit send. I closed my eyes and exhaled, deeply. For the first time in months, I felt my spine straighten. This was real. This was happening. I was taking my voice back. The response didn't come from Marcus. It came from the company's general counsel. A carefully worded, thinly veiled attempt at intimidation, claiming I had acted within the scope of employment and therefore had no separate claim of ownership. But the mistake was glaring. They still couldn't produce a signed IP transfer, because there wasn't one. I expected Nina to be cautious, but instead she laughed. They're bluffing, she said, and they know it. That's why they're not threatening legal action. They're afraid you'll be the one to file first. It was surreal. The same people who once made me feel so small, now scrambling behind conference room doors trying to figure out how to keep my silence. How ironic. But I didn't stop there. I reached out, quietly, to the healthcare client. The $3 million contract they had signed. That platform they were promised? It had my name written all over it, metaphorically and technically. I met with their CTO over coffee. We talked for 2 hours. When I showed him my documentation, he turned pale. You built all of this? Yes, I said calmly. And they're selling it without the legal right to do so. He rubbed his jaw, visibly disturbed. Jade, we don't want to be caught in the middle of a legal war. If you had your own entity, we'd much rather deal with you directly. Wait, what? I nearly dropped my coffee. You're saying, if I had a company, you'd consider switching? Consider? He said. We'd prefer it. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from possibility. That night, I filed the paperwork to form my own LLC. I called it Northbridge Insight, a nod to the architecture framework I had designed. It felt surreal, submitting that form, setting up the domain, opening the business account. But even more surreal, knowing they had no idea what was coming. Marcus still thought I was licking my wounds somewhere in silence. But while he was trying to protect his title, I was building a new one. It all unfolded faster than I expected. Just 3 weeks after filing my LLC and having that quiet coffee with the client's CTO, I received an official request for proposal, addressed not to the company I used to work for, but to me, to Northbridge Insight. They were ready to cut ties with Marcus's firm, and they wanted a new contract with me. I didn't rush it. I had Nina draft the proposal carefully, outlining everything: scope, pricing, terms of service, legal ownership clauses, all ironclad. When we submitted it, I half expected the board to hesitate. They didn't. They signed within 4 days. 4 days. The contract was worth more than I ever imagined, partly because they added a retainer for future platform improvements, and partly because they respected something Marcus never did. They knew who actually built the thing. The news hit Marcus like a bullet through glass. He found out the same day I did. Apparently, the client's team had notified his firm that the contract would be terminated immediately, citing unresolved legal and compliance concerns. It must have been chaos. A $3 million deal collapsing overnight, after they had already announced it to investors, celebrated it in press releases, and built their entire Q4 projections around it. The next morning, I got a call from someone I hadn't heard from in months. Sarah, a project manager, who had always been kind to me in quiet ways. Her voice was shaky. "Jade, what did you do?" I paused, then said gently, "I took back what was mine." She laughed, half in awe, half in disbelief. "Marcus is losing his mind. He stormed out of the board meeting this morning. Investors are threatening to pull out." I didn't celebrate, not outwardly, but inside, I've never felt more whole. 2 days later, the company issued a bland internal memo. Due to shifting client relationships and restructuring, we are undergoing leadership changes effective immediately. Translation? Marcus was out, disgraced, removed, silenced. No farewell party, no thank you speech. Just an empty office, cleared out before lunch. His nameplate gone. His legacy shattered by one oversight, one lie, and one woman he thought he could silence. Too bad. A week after his departure, I walked into that same building for a scheduled meeting. This time, not as an employee, but as the CEO of the partner company. Every pair of eyes in the lobby turned to me, some in shock, some in guilt, some in something closer to admiration. Even Lucas looked stunned as he passed me by in the hallway. And I smiled, not because I wanted revenge, not even because I wanted recognition, but because, for the first time, I wasn't being introduced into the room. I was the one leading it. We sat across from each other in the glass conference room, board members, legal reps, new execs, and me. I presented the transition plan professionally, answered questions clearly, and laid out timelines with precision. No raised voices, no bitterness, just competence, presence, power. At the end of the meeting, one of the senior advisors leaned in and said, "We should have been working with you all along." I nodded. "You still can." And I meant it, because I wasn't there to destroy what was left. I was there to replace it. It's strange how calm everything felt afterward. No fireworks, no dramatic declarations. Just a quiet, steady peace that settled over my life like the first morning after a long storm. I was working more than ever, leading a small but powerful team at Northbridge Insight. We had new contracts, new ideas, and for the first time in years, I felt seen. Not just for what I produced, but for who I was. My daughter noticed it too. "You smile more now, Mommy," she said one night as I tucked her in. I kissed her forehead and whispered, "I feel more like myself again." There were still days when I thought about Marcus, about that building, about the years I spent waiting for someone else to validate me. But those thoughts didn't sting anymore. They reminded me of how far I had come, and how easy it is to lose yourself in the noise of ambition and approval. I didn't need to burn bridges. I just had to build my own. A month later, I passed by the old office tower. The glass windows reflected the sun the same way they always had. But everything inside had changed, and so had I. I wasn't invisible anymore, because I had finally stopped asking to be seen and started claiming my place instead. Too many of us give years, sometimes decades, to places that never truly saw us. We shrink ourselves to fit into systems not built for us, hoping hard work will speak for itself. But sometimes you have to speak for yourself. You don't need permission to take back what's yours. You don't need validation to protect your worth. You just need one moment of courage. Have you ever stayed silent when you should have spoken up? Or walked away when you knew it was time? Share your story in the comments. You never know who it might help find their voice again.